The Argo sliced through the waves, its wooden hull creaking with every surge, as the morning sun glimmered on the restless sea. The ship was more than just a vessel, it was a symbol of hope and daring, carrying a crew whose names would echo through legend. On board, Greece's bravest heroes stood shoulder to shoulder, united by a single perilous quest: to seize the fabled Golden Fleece. Each man was chosen for his strength, skill, or cunning, and together they formed a brotherhood bound by destiny. At the prow stood Jason, their chosen leader, his gaze unwavering as he scanned the horizon. The weight of leadership pressed on his shoulders, but his resolve was unshakable. He knew that every decision he made could mean the difference between triumph and disaster. After what felt like endless days and nights adrift, battered by wind and salt, the Argonauts finally glimpsed the outline of land, Bithynia. It rose from the sea, wild and mysterious, its forests thick and impenetrable, promising both danger and relief. The coastline was shrouded in mist, the trees looming like silent sentinels. The crew, exhausted and parched, rowed with renewed energy, driven by the hope of fresh water and a chance to rest their aching limbs. Yet, beneath their relief, a current of anxiety ran strong. As the Argo drew closer, figures emerged from the shadows of the trees. The Bebryces, tall, fierce, and imposing, stood in silent ranks along the beach, their spears glinting in the pale light. Their presence was a warning. This land was not theirs to claim. The Argonauts' hearts tightened with apprehension. These were not the welcoming faces of friends, but the wary, guarded stares of those prepared to defend their home. Jason gave the order to drop anchor. Shields were gripped, swords checked, and the heroes steeled themselves for whatever might come. Each man knew that the next steps could lead to battle, or to an uneasy truce. The promise of adventure, which had once filled their hearts with excitement, was now shadowed by a sense of foreboding. The unknown lay before them, thick as the morning fog. They had already survived monsters lurking beneath the waves and tempests that threatened to tear their ship apart. But this new challenge, facing a proud and hostile people, felt different, more personal, and perhaps even more dangerous. The Bebryces' hard eyes followed every move, their silence more menacing than any shout. The air was thick with tension, as if the land itself was holding its breath. The Argonauts braced themselves, hands tightening on their weapons, ready for whatever test this strange and wild land would bring. Each man wondered if this would be the day their legend was truly forged. The adventure was far from over. In Bithynia, the next chapter of their epic journey was about to begin, and none could say what fate awaited them on these shadowed shores. The Argonauts rowed ashore, their hearts filled with hope and anticipation. They had faced many challenges on their journey, but nothing could have prepared them for what awaited on this desolate coast, only to be surrounded by grim Bebrycian warriors. These men were not just defenders of their land, they were enforcers of a brutal tradition. No greetings, no offers of food, just silence, and the threat of violence. The air was thick with tension, and the Argonauts could feel the weight of hostile eyes upon them. Their king, Amycus, emerged, a giant, arrogant and cold. His presence was commanding, and his eyes bore into the Argonauts with a mixture of disdain and challenge. He didn't care for their quest or their needs. To him they were just another group of intruders to be dealt with. Amycus declared, "Here, all strangers must fight me in a boxing match. If your champion wins, you may drink. If not, you become my slaves." His voice was as cold as the wind that whipped across the shore. The Argonauts exchanged wary glances. They had faced many dangers, but this was a new kind of threat. One that tested not just their strength, but their unity and resolve. This was no welcome. This was a threat. The Bebrycian warriors stood ready, their faces hard and unyielding. The Bebryces' law was simple and brutal. There was no room for negotiation or mercy. The wind carried a chill, and hope for peace vanished. The Argonauts knew they were in for a fight, one that would test their very survival. The heroes realized they would have to fight for their survival. There was no other way out of this grim situation. Amycus's challenge was clear: strength or slavery. The Argonauts had no choice but to accept. The Argonauts' quest had taken a dangerous turn. What was supposed to be a journey of discovery had become a fight for freedom. There would be no rest until the king's cruel custom was answered. The night was filled with anxiety and the weight of the impending battle. The heroes steeled themselves for the ordeal ahead. Each man knew that their fate hung in the balance. The beach was now an arena. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine their destiny. Amycus, son of Poseidon, was a mountain of muscle and pride. He ruled by strength, crushing every traveler who landed on his shores. Boxing was his favorite sport, and his weapon of terror. No one had ever defeated him, and he relished the fear he inspired. Amycus taunted the Argonauts. "Who dares face me, or will you surrender and spare yourselves?" His arrogance blinded him to his own weakness. The Bebryces cheered, certain of their king's victory. For them, this was tradition, a brutal display of dominance. The Argonauts stood silent, weighing their options. The stage was set for a deadly contest. The fate of the crew hung in the balance. Jason's anger simmered. The Argonauts would not bow to tyranny. They needed a champion, someone skilled, not just strong. Heracles was mighty, but boxing required more than brute force. Then Pollux stepped forward, calm, steady, the greatest boxer in Greece. Divine blood ran in his veins, and his skill was unmatched. Pollux met Amycus's gaze without fear. "I accept your challenge," he said. The Bebryces laughed at the smaller man, but the Argonauts knew his worth. The fight was set. Brute strength against divine skill. The crowd buzzed with anticipation. Pollux's resolve was unshakable. The Argonauts' honor rested on his shoulders. The moment of truth had arrived. The beach fell silent, awaiting the clash. Pollux prepared quietly, focused and calm. He wrapped his hands in brutal leather gloves, ready for a fight of survival, not sport. Castor, his twin, watched with pride and worry. Amycus stomped impatiently, mocking his opponent. "Hurry, little Greek, I grow bored," the king roared. Pollux ignored the taunts, studying Amycus's stance and movements. He knew strength alone wouldn't win. He needed speed and strategy. The fighters faced each other in the makeshift ring. The Bebryces jeered, the Argonauts watched in tense silence. Pollux's mind was sharp, his body ready. The outcome would depend on more than muscle. The fight was about to begin. With a roar, Amycus charged, swinging with the force of a storm. Pollux moved like the wind, dodging, weaving, never where the king expected. The Bebryces cheered, but Amycus's blows hit only air. Pollux's plan was simple: let the king tire himself out. Amycus grew frustrated, his attacks wilder and slower. Sweat poured down his face, his arrogance faded. Pollux stayed calm, learning with every move. He saw Amycus's weaknesses, how he overreached, how he favored one side. The crowd's confidence wavered as their king struggled. Pollux was not just surviving, he was controlling the fight. Amycus's strength began to fade. The Argonauts watched, hope rising. The moment for Pollux to strike was near. The king's exhaustion was his undoing. The tide of the match was turning. Pollux shifted from defense to attack. He darted in, landing sharp, precise punches to Amycus's face and ribs. Each blow stung, drawing blood and anger from the king. Amycus's attacks grew desperate, leaving him open. Pollux never stood still, always moving, always thinking. The fight became a contest of mind versus muscle. The Argonauts cheered as Pollux's strategy paid off. Amycus, in a final rage, threw a wild punch, missing completely. Pollux ducked, then struck with all his skill, landing a crushing blow to the king's temple. The sound echoed across the beach. The invincible king had met his match. The Bebryces stared in disbelief. The fight was over. Amycus staggered, then crashed to the ground, defeated. Silence gripped the beach as the Bebryces stared at their fallen king. The Argonauts erupted in cheers. Pollux stood victorious. The son of Zeus had triumphed over brute force, but the Bebryces' shock turned to fury. Ignoring their king's defeat, they grabbed weapons and charged the Argonauts. Jason barked orders. The heroes formed a shield wall. Castor fought fiercely beside his brother. Heracles swung his club with devastating power. The peaceful shore became a battlefield. The Argonauts, united and skilled, met the attack head-on. Steel clashed. War cries filled the air. The Bebryces fought with rage, but the Argonauts fought with purpose. The heroes would not be broken. The outcome of the battle would decide their fate. The struggle for survival raged on the sand. Victory hung in the balance. The Argonauts fought as one, their shields locked and spears thrusting forward in perfect unison. Each man trusted the brother beside him, their hearts beating with the same fierce determination. In the chaos of battle, their discipline became their greatest weapon, a force as unyielding as the sea itself. Their discipline overwhelmed the wild Bebryces, whose wild charges and shouts could not break the Argonauts' line. The enemy's courage faltered as they saw their king struggle and their warriors fall. The The Bebryces, once so bold, now found themselves outmatched by the unity and skill of the Greeks. Panic spread among the Bebryces, and they fled into the woods, abandoning the field in a desperate rush for safety. The forest swallowed them, their cries fading into the shadows of the trees. In their haste, they left behind their king, fallen among the scattered weapons and shields. The battlefield was silent but for the wind, carrying away the last echoes of the fight. The Argonauts did not pursue their defeated foes. They had won what they needed: victory, honor, and the right to continue their quest. There was no need for vengeance or needless bloodshed. Instead, they filled their waterskins at the cool springs, grateful for the life-giving water. They tended to their wounds, binding cuts and bruises with gentle hands. As the sun dipped low, they gathered the spoils of victory: shields, swords, and tokens of their triumph. Around them, the air was filled with a sense of relief and renewed purpose. Their bond, forged in battle, was now stronger than ever, and their quest for the Golden Fleece felt more possible than before. As the last light of day faded, the Argonauts boarded the Argo, their legendary ship. They moved with quiet pride, each man knowing he had played his part in the day's victory. The ship creaked and groaned as they prepared to sail onward, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. On deck, Orpheus took up his lyre, his fingers dancing across the strings. The gentle notes drifted over the water, soothing tired bodies and restless minds. His song rose above the waves, telling of their victory, of Pollux' unmatched courage in the fight, and of the downfall of the cruel Bebrycian king. The melody wove together the story of the day, turning hardship into legend. The heroes listened, their spirits lifted by the music and the memory of their triumph. Laughter and quiet conversation returned to the ship, and hope blossomed in their hearts. They celebrated not just victory but the strength of their fellowship. The music of Orpheus reminded them that together they could overcome any trial. The Argo sailed into the night, its sails catching the gentle breeze beneath a sky full of stars. Hope was restored, and the promise of new adventures shimmered on the horizon. The legend of their bravery would echo across the sea, carried by the wind to distant shores and future generations. Their journey for the Golden Fleece continued, each day bringing new challenges and new hopes. The adventure was far from over. The Argonauts pressed on, united and unbroken, their hearts set on glory and the promise of legend.